Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options in Play video update. Never a dull moment in this market, huh? At least not recently. For the basically the second time in a row, Trump has managed to upstage Powell. So interestingly, when Powell cut rates back at our last Fed meeting, it was the China trade tariff tweet that actually ended up doing more damage, like right in the aftermath of that. And now today, everybody was focused on the Jackson Hole announcement this morning, the speech this morning. And then what do you know? We get like a tweet, not too far behind that just completely changed the entire course of the day. So, um, you've got to be on your toes at all times. Some things you can plan for, some things you can't. And that's why we play the game, right? Because it's constantly changing. There's always something going on, even in the late August here. Um, and that's not why you're watching this video, though. But I just felt like I had to get it out there. Earnings. We are at the tail end of earnings season, but what you'll see from like the next few minutes here is that there are still a bunch of interesting names and some bigger ones too. So it is the last week of August, historically pretty slow, but definitely some things to keep an eye on. All right. So Monday before the open, not much. Actually, nothing of all that really that interests me. After the close Monday, Billy. So just a smaller cap. It was at one point like a newer IPO, but it's kind of getting a little bit longer in the tooth now. Not really all that interesting of a chart. They're priced in about 2 points. I haven't played this one in a while, and I haven't, I haven't really followed it too closely. So it could be a mover, just not a name like I think I'm going to be involved with, just because I don't really have much experience with it, and the chart doesn't really look too compelling one way or the other. For the open on Tuesday, Anaplan. So a newer software IPO, newish. It's priced in about 8 points, although those are monthly options. Definitely a strong trending name. Very very strong trend. Hasn't broken below the 50-day in a couple months. It's coming off a good quarter and it's up a lot since that time. So up a lot, strong trend. Expectations are high, options are high. That's been the recipe for a little bit of like a disappointing reaction. So I guess my plan will be to see if maybe it pulls back into trend support, maybe the 50-day, or if it even like breaks a little bit further. It gives a nice opportunity for a possible like bullish swing. Momo also Tuesday morning. So 4.25. No, why is this not blunt? There you go. 4.25. What they're looking for. Um, this has been in the past a pretty good mover. There's been some quarters where you've seen some pretty sharp moves. It's in a little bit of like a tightening pennant pattern right now, right? You can see right here. So a little bit of like a tightening pennant forming. Um, so it's not like a bad setup per se. It's just it's kind of like wedged in between the two. So at 425, that would basically put it either right at the top or right at the bottom. So it would have to get through either side of that to really create a bigger move. But it is possible. It has moved pretty sharply in the past on occasion, right? So not a bad setup. I just don't know which way to lean because for a while this week the China names were very strong, rebounding at the low, and then all of a sudden, just in like one day today with like one tweet, it seems like everything has changed. So a lot of mixed headlines, a lot of cross currents. Not really sure what to do with it, but it's overall not a bad setup. So maybe worth keeping an eye on. Tuesday after the close, Autodesk. So software name here. 12 points is about what they're looking for there. It actually seems like it has a little bit more potential than the other name that I'm going to talk about in a second with this Viva. Um, Actually, I'll pull it up here. So you can see Viva, 16 points. Those are monthly options. That's what they're pricing in. Just again, kind of like Anaplan. It's up a good amount since the last reported, in a pretty strong trend. Options seem a little bit more expensive, especially because they're monthly. You're paying for a bunch for time. So I don't think I'd necessarily do anything with that. But Autodesk, like I was saying, seems to have a little bit more potential. It's well off the high. It has moved pretty consistently on earnings, not always the same direction, but it has moved pretty consistently. When it reports either up or down. 12 points doesn't seem too bad. It has had some moves on bigger than that on occasion, and interestingly, it's below the 200-day, which has really created some pretty significant volatility on some of these software stocks when they're this far underneath the 200-day and moving out for support. So, maybe a lower debit straddle, some sort of volatility strategy, maybe capitalize on a bigger than expected move on that one. Wednesday before the open, a couple of retailers. So Movado, 3.5 is the expected move on that. Those are monthly options as well, though. We've traded this one in the past, and it's actually a pretty consistent mover, which is nice. Consistently big too, and you can see that there's been some really significant moves just over like the last few quarters, right? So consistently a mover, consistently a big mover. Chart looks pretty bad, and it seems like it's in a pretty steady downtrend. But retail's been, kind of like surprising more to the upside this quarter. So, 3.5 doesn't seem too bad. It's averaged more than that the last 4 quarters, and retail's been pretty volatile. So probably not a bad one to take a look at too. Tiffany's, also Wednesday before the open, 575 is the price to move on that. It broke down out of like this bear flag right at the beginning of August, and it's really kind of struggling to bounce. It's under yearly support, and it really doesn't have much down until like that late December low down in like the mid 70s or even low 70s. The chart definitely seems more bearish, but actually last quarter was better than expected. So some mixed signals on this one, and it actually hasn't been as big of a mover as it was last year. So it's like the volatility's been kind of drying up a little bit around earnings. So I'm a little bit more cautious. Might be one that I kind of wait and see what they say, and then go from there. Wednesday after the close, kind of a busy night. So you have Elastic, which is kind of like a high growth software name. We traded it for a swing, which was great. Now it's pulled, it's basically given back the entire move, which, kind of parabolic up and straight back down. They're pricing in 9.5. Those are monthly options, though. The numbers have been fantastic growth wise, but it's actually closed red both of the times it's reported. Not a great history of responding well. Chart is kind of sloppy, so this might be one where, if the numbers look good and it kind of gets back up into like the high 80s, 90s, maybe we're gonna hop in real quick for a swing. But we were able to catch a pretty good move here. Definitely eyeing it, but not a great history, and the chart doesn't look great. So probably hold off putting on a trade specifically for that. Five Below. So the price in 10 points. This was a leader for a while. It had been a pretty good performer in the retail landscape. Kind of survived a lot of the carnage from last year. It's cooled off a bit, and it's below its 200-day. But the numbers overall have been pretty solid, and I feel like it could resume the leadership if it's good and gets back up through that 200-day. It could maybe make a pretty quick run to like 130, even like the low 130s. So price it in 10, but maybe there's visibility for like a 15, even more. So I think I may lean bullish, maybe something slightly longer term too, maybe like some spreads just to get that risk down a bit. Williams-Sonoma, another retailer. 6.5 points, what's expected. Those are monthly options, though. Heavily shorted and not too far from its 52-week high, which you can see here. I feel like I've had a tougher time trading this one in the past, but it does have kind of like that recipe for a big move because, it's up a lot in a kind of like a short period, heavily shorted. It has a history of occasionally seeing some pretty big swings when it reports, so you are paying for time because those are monthly options, but even then, 6.5 isn't too bad based off some of the moves it's had over the last year. So could be one to keep an eye on too. Maybe like a lower debit strangle on that one. Nutanix, software stock, thing's been slammed. 3.25 is what they're looking for. We've actually played this in the past, but down here, just not a huge fan of the setup. Thing has gotten just crushed. Not really much of a bounce. Um, I feel like the risk reward maybe favors the bull side more just because of where it came from. But at the same time, the chart looks incredibly bearish. The thing hasn't bounced in several months. So mixed signals, not a great setup. Probably just going to leave it alone. Okta, another software name. 13 points. This is definitely one of the software leaders. Definitely has been just a great year-to-date performer. Just unbelievable trend. Strong stock, up a ton. It's up 100%. Oh, actually, it's up over 100% this year. 13 points on the high side. Expectations are high. Performance has been unbelievable. So that's the recipe for a trending trade. Like to me, what's worked in the past is kind of sitting out earnings, see if there's a pullback, maybe to like in this case maybe to like the 100-day, maybe you can snag it for like a quick bullish swing or something like that. Just it seems like expectations are high, option pricing is high, performance has been fantastic. So very very one-sided on this thing. PVH. Speaking of one-sided, and look at the chart of that. Basically, the complete opposite. Nine points is what the straddle's looking for. Though those are monthly options. It's been crushed. Worst price since 2016. Right, if I go back, I can't even go back. The worst price since 2016. Option price seems to be a little bit high, but I think that's because of the monthly contracts. It's in a pretty heavy downtrend too. So option prices are a little elevated, real strong downtrend, not a great setup. So I mean, it could be a pretty big mover, but I don't even know which way to like really lean. So probably just leave it alone. Abercrombie. So this is Thursday before the bell now. So Abercrombie, 2.5 points priced in here. Coming off a weak quarter where it got slammed. Hasn't bounced, remains weak, and is hanging right above a pretty critical level of support, 15. This to me seems like it could be like a decent speculative bearish play, right? If it's another weak quarter and it breaks 15, there's a real obvious gap down to like the 12.5 area, and really like the next major area of support doesn't kick in until like 10. So there seems to be plenty of room lower on this, coming off a weak quarter because a pretty significant gap below. So I'm thinking bearish on that. Best Buy. I honestly I don't know what to make of Best Buy. So I really haven't had a feel for this name lately. I feel like this thing has spun me around a bunch of times in the last couple years. They're priced in 575, which is a little bit on the higher side because earnings have. It's really it seems like one out of every three, one of every four, it has a big move. It's really not consistent. It's been like spinning around like a top off the recent tariff headlines too. So I don't have a strong opinion on it. Options aren't that cheap. The chart doesn't look really compelling, so I just really don't know what to do with it. So I think like I'd just be better off just being on the sideline for that. Burlington. It's also Thursday before the open. Priced in 13.5 points for their actual report. We actually played this one this past week just as a sympathy trade on TJX, Raw Stores, and able to catch a pretty decent move on that. Even though today it's down, we're able to cut risk and roll up ahead of that. So, traded it this week. Probably not going to trade it next week. It's kind of like with Kohl's, similar trade in Kohl's, right? Traded as a sympathy trade the week prior, and then the actual report. Just going to leave it alone. So that's the plan with Burlington. Also Thursday before the open, you have two dollar stores. So Dollar General which is priced in at 9, and Dollar Tree, which is priced in at 7.5. So Dollar General definitely been leading. I mean, very 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 obvious. It's above basically all of its near-term moving averages, just marginally off its 52-week high, right? Versus Dollar Tree, which has obviously been lagging, which is below a bunch of its moving averages, including the 200-day, which is pretty important. I mean, it's way off its 52-week high. So of the two, I feel like Dollar Tree could have the better recipe for a bigger move. At the same time, it also had less of a move last quarter. So there's a lot of mixed signals here because it's lagging a bit, but also less volatile last quarter versus DG, which was more volatile but is leading, So So to me, I feel like Dollar Tree probably could be the one to go after. But because last quarter was kind of a dud, I feel like I prefer to get risk down a bit. So maybe some sort of strangle with spreads, right? Just to get that overall risk profile down. Thursday after the close, Marvell. So chip name. Today it's off because of the headlines, right? They're pricing at 1.5 points for earnings next week, and this one's been a leader for long stretches this year, and it was looking pretty good just up until today. The thing with this is that I feel like the earnings are going to almost take a backseat to like any trade headlines because if tensions remain high, the chip stocks are one of like the sectors that really come under pressure the most. So it's like if the headlines are if the headlines are still the tensions are high, the headlines are still all about trade relations, then it seems like this is going to be real tough to get paid on the upside. So it's an open swing position right now, but we're gonna have to like kind of monitor that pretty close and maybe make an adjustment on it ahead of earnings, just because I don't know. It seems like a tough backdrop right now for that type of name and that type of pattern to get rewarded. So I'm gonna be keeping a pretty close eye on that. Ulta, also Thursday night. 25.5 points is the price to move on that. Estee Lauder was good, but Ulta doesn't always follow that one too closely. It's off its high and like right above the 200 A, but last quarter you can see here was kind of choppy. Got hit and then rebounded. Um, it's holding the 200 day okay, and I guess I would lean slightly bullish, but the option pricing might be a little bit high just based off the overall market environment. Um, I could go either way. Maybe depending on how like the next few days play out. If the stock is maybe a little bit lower, option price comes down a little bit, maybe it'll be worth a shot. I'm on the fence, but if I did anything, I might favor the bull side of it on Ulta. Workday, 14 points is the price to move on this. I feel like this is one of the better setups of the week. Definitely one of the better software setups, but even one of the better setups just kind of in general. Really, they've consistently delivered. All right, the thing was in a great trend, been very consistent. The numbers have been strong. It rolled over pretty sharply, but you can see it's held the 200 day perfectly and it's starting to like curl and like turn the corner higher. Greater than 10% off its high. I feel like expectations maybe come down a bit. Option pricing isn't too bad. And I'm looking, maybe if the numbers are good, you get a pretty quick snapback back in, up into like the 210 area, and they can make like a push to retest that high. So I'm thinking maybe something a little bit further out of the money, like spreads, like slightly longer dated, maybe a few weeks out or like a month out, something out of the money, and ultimately targeting a retest of this high if the numbers are good. And then last but not least, Friday before the open, Big Lots. 3 points is what the options are anticipating on that, but those are monthly. Traded this one in the past, and I just feel like the recent slide makes this a lot tougher this time around. I mean, it's thing has gotten crushed. It's basically lost 50% of its value in 3 months, right at a multi-year low. Um, it hasn't had a bounce in weeks, and it just seemed like expectations are probably pretty washed out. But it's hard being bullish on a chart like this, but it's also hard being bearish because it's gotten hit so hard. Maybe if it has like a big move, maybe if it has like another leg lower, then you can try for reversal, or if it rebounds ahead of time, maybe try for like a move back down. But right here, if it stays around 20 after the move low it's had, I'm probably going to avoid that one. All right. So that's that. That will wrap up the month of August, and that will put us through Labor Day, and then everybody's back to their desk in September, and things should pick up from there. So a surprisingly good lineup of earnings for this late in the quarter for this late in August. Not to mention you got the market flying around. So actually set up for some decent action next week. So um, looking forward to it. All right. So have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you guys all on Monday.